Welcome back. This is Kevin McCain with Idaho Horror Classes and Kevin McCain Studios. Today we're going to be talking about how we can vary the intensity of our color. This is for a limited palette with just one yellow, one red, one blue. And then over here we've got mixtures of, this is our burnt umber. This over here is ivory black. And this is basically just three grays mixed up with the burnt umber and white. These are three puddles mixed up with the ivory black and white. If you wanted to put Payne's gray instead of the ivory black, that would be fine too. Or you could add a little blue to that black if you wanted that to be a slightly bluer grays. And if we wanted to warm these grays up, we could add a little bit of orange to it if we so chose. But the idea so we already talked about how to darken or lighten color. If we're going to darken a color like a yellow or a red or an orange, we can use the burnt umber. And because burnt umber is a dark orange, it'll keep those colors yellow and red and orange. And then we've got the black is a dark blue, and so we'll use that to darken our greens and our blues and our purples, anything that has blue in it. All right, and so through that, and then of course mixing our colors together, we can get different hues. We can say, all right, well, this over here, if I take a little yellow, and if I take a tiny bit of red, we can go ahead and mix out, an orange very quickly, like so. And if we wanted to make it green, we could take, a bit of the blue. Something was in that blue. It's got a little bit of paint in it, so I had to take that off. We'll then take a little bit of the yellow. Yeah, now through adding the yellow, we've got a green, very dark green, but a green nonetheless. And then if we wanted to make a purple, we could take again some of the red. Now this red is the stronger red, much stronger than this blue, so we got to be careful about that. Yep, that red just gobbled it up, ate his lunch. So we're going to put a lot more blue in there and probably take out some of this red because the red is just a very strong red. I can see if I scrape it, that's called an undertone. That I can actually see what the color is because this is really dark. It's a very dark color, and so we want to be able to see what the actual color is. And so we can do that by, again, you can scrape it over white. Or you can add white to it, but we don't want to add white to it because that will also weaken it. It'll make it lighter, it'll make it slightly duller. But if you scrape that over white, you can tell what the actual color of that is. And so that right there is pretty close to a true purple right now. And true purples are very intense the darker they are. Now for intensity, that just means how bright or how dull a color is. So a highly intense color or a high chroma color, because intensity and chroma mean the exact same thing. High intensity would be like these colors over here, right out of the tube. They're the colors at the highest. They're as intense as they can be. That's a high chroma. Whereas something like this brown and white, well, that's a very low chroma. It's a low chroma orange. Whenever we're talking, there's no such thing as just brown. Browns are they're some kind of yellow, red, or orange. So they're either green yellows or true yellows or orange yellows or red orange or yellow orange or red violet. Of course, red violet, it's kind of, you're kind of leaving the ability to make it a brown because browns are, again, they're reds, they're oranges, and they're yellows. So once you get to, too far to green, once you're far enough from yellow, once that yellow green gets too green, it's no longer, it won't be brown anymore. It won't look brown. It'll just look green. So we're going to talk about how we can vary the intensity. Now, whenever we have a color that we're trying to see or trying to match, we want to ask ourselves, is it a bright color, like a high chroma, or is it very low chroma, or is it a medium chroma? So this would be a very low chroma over here, Whereas if we took this and a little bit of this, maybe we'll do it just a tiny bit more. But the idea is that maybe we need to, there we go. That should read a little better. So again, this would be a high chroma, this would be a medium chroma, and this would be a low chroma. Now it has nothing to do with how light or how dark it is. It also has nothing to do with what the hue is. So it has nothing to do with how light or how dark the color is, and it has nothing to do with what the hue is. And hue is either yellow, red, or blue, or orange, purple, or green. It's one of 7 hues. This would be an orange, but it's a medium intensity orange. It's about a step 5 on the value scale, you know, and then it would be, so we have the hue that it's an orange, its value is about a 5, and that it has a intensity that's about, it's a middle intensity. And so again, we're going to try to show you how we can, and I just did that really quickly, didn't even think about it, but that's how you're going to do it. If we want to lower the intensity of a yellow or lower the intensity of a red and keep a red, because if we add black to it, this is going to go purple. If we add black to the yellow, it's going to go, you know, it's going to go green. But if we want to just lower the intensity, now I can also vary the value, but again, intensity doesn't care about value. Like little pastel colors of Easter are basically medium intensity colors. A little higher on the intensity, but they're not full intensity. They're somewhere in about the middle. So again, if I add this to the, now I just add this to this yellow to dull it down. And of course, the more I add to it, the duller it's going to be. Like this is still a yellow, but this is, you know, a very low intensity yellow. Much lower intensity than this. But when I added this gray, so we have to remember that this is a gray. It's also, you know, it's in this brown, there's also a tiny bit of blue. Plus when you add white to any color, it cools it down. So when I added this to this yellow, we got sort of a little bit of a green coming out of that. So it's gone from like a true yellow to a yellow green. And if we said, well, I want to bring that back out of that, you know, that yellow, the yellow green, well then I'd have to add a bit of the orange back to it to pull this from out of the green family and pull it back across the spectrum to get back into the orange. So that right there is now back to, well, a little bit more. There we go. This is now getting, this is back to a true yellow, whereas this was, you know, very green. But by adding this gray, we can dull that color down. So we're going to use, if it's a orange or a red or a yellow, we added brown to this orange, and that's what we got. If we add, you know, and if we wanted to keep this about the same value, this is lighter than the red right here. This is darker than the red right here. And if I wanted to get something in between, of course, I can mix them together. But again, if I wanted this to be just a little bit duller, we could add just a little bit of this gray to the red. Or if we wanted it to be much more dull, we could add the red to the gray. It's kind of like that old commercial, you know, it's a little, you got your chocolate in my, anyways, peanut butter or whatever, you know, for whatever that. But we can put, you know, a lot of the gray in it, it's going to be grayer. If you put just a little bit of it, it's going to be brighter. So it just depends on, again, what we're looking for. If we wanted to lower that intensity just a little bit, well, then we can add just a little bit. If I wanted to lower it and lighten it, well, then I'll, you know, add, you know, a lighter gray to it, what have you. But, you know, this would be a high intensity, this would be a medium intensity, and this is getting to be a lower intensity color. All right. And if we wanted to dull down our greens or our purples or our blues, again, we're going to use, I'm going to use a lighter gray just so we can see the color a little bit better, because it seems like it's almost black in this thing. You know, so again, this is, Again, this has gone really blue-green. So again, this has neutralized it, but it's gone a little bit on the bluer side. So again, if I wanted to go ahead and bring that back, I'd have to take a little bit of yellow and now, you know, pull it back into the green family, which is, you know, is almost a blue. This is now a blue-green. And, you know, so we can shift the hue very, very slightly. If we want that duller still, again, we could go ahead and add a little bit, maybe I'll add a little bit of both of these guys together. And if we add this to it, again, this is much more gray than this is. And if we lost, you know, if it's going too blue on us again, take just a tiny bit of yellow and add the yellow back into it. Bring it back to, like, this is starting to look blue again. So we just need a little bit more yellow in here to pull this back into the greens, out of the blues into the green. Because again, this is a dark blue, so it adds blue to that green too. And we're already starting with and I also took it from the part that had more of the blue that wasn't mixed too well into there. So that's probably the other part of it. Because I'm like, man, that really went blue. That would explain it. But I could always add just a little bit of yellow at the end to shift it. And again, now we're back to green, but we're still, you know, close to a dull green. If I wanted to dull down my blue, what would I do? Well, I'd come over here and I'd add, you know, if I wanted to add a little bit just to dull it down a little scotch, look what a lovely color that is. If I wanted to dull it down even more, well, then we're going to add even more gray to it, okay? Most of your colors when you're painting are myriads of grays or lower intensity colors. There's very few colors that are right out of the tube like this. Almost all your colors are going to be not cooled down, pardon me. Their intensity is going to be lowered, okay? And you'll be surprised how something like this that looks very, very dull and gray, how different it looks if you put it right in there. And all of a sudden it just jumps, right? Because this is blue, this is orange. And now you're like, yeah, I could see that in a landscape. Yeah, you would, because you're not going to see this in a landscape unless you're doing paintings like Matisse or something. Even Monet, he would not use straight color like this. He would modify it. You know, he'd dull it down a little bit, because if you're putting, again, this red doesn't look too vibrant until you put this in it. And now all of a sudden that red starts to really come out, and so does the green. It's pretty wild. That's what Impressionism is all about. And maybe that's too small to see, so I might have to get a little bit bigger and add it into there. But again, that seems very, very green in that red. Whereas if you looked at where I pulled it from, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't all that, didn't seem all that bright. So there's a lot about context to this. If we wanted to dull down a blue, again, we dulled the blue down. If we wanted to dull down a violet, and again, this is a violet over here, and again, this is really, really dark, so we'll use this, which will lighten it, plus it'll dull it. Again, so, and it's a very vibrant color, and we can tell by, look how, that's still a very, very bright, bubblegummy looking sort of color. And so if we wanted to dull it down even more, well, then we'd add more of the gray to it. Okay. Now, if it starts to get too blue, because again, this is blue, they're adding this, so it's going to a little bit of the blue violet. So we might add just a touch of red to pull it back across the scale. Now this looks like it's in the same color family. So understand, whenever you mix colors, there's always going to be a slight shifting of the hue. So, you know, so this went from sort of from the violet to the blue violet, and then we had a little bit of red, and it was just enough red not to pull it to red violet, but to pull it over to purple. If I kept adding red, well, then it would become red violet, and if I added more, it'd start to become even redder violet, and so forth and so on. But this is how we can dull colors, is we can use our grays, and of course, the more gray we add, the duller the color. So if we went and really added some gray into this thing, well, now this is still a yellow, but it's a very, very neutral yellow, and we can't tell until, again, we put it into something like this, and we can see the yellow because now it's standing there against this this blue-gray, all right? So again, the color is context many times. But what if we want to mix like what's called a true neutral gray? Well, a true neutral gray is one that has no color leaning. It doesn't lean orange, purple, green. It doesn't red. It's not red. It's not blue. It's not yellow. It's right. You know, it doesn't have a family. It's so neutral you can't tell. And the only way to mix that is, or the easiest way, is to use the brown and the black and the white to really neutralize that color down to a neutral gray. So this brings us to the next part. Let's say, like right now, this is, let's say I added this. I've added to this yellow this. I've added, you know, this to this yellow, but it's still too yellow, and I need to gray it down even more. The only way to gray it down more is by adding this. Now, this is orange and this is blue. Now they are what are called complementary colors. And when you add complementary colors, they really start to neutralize one another. They really start to go gray towards that neutral gray very quickly. And so now, by adding a little bit of that blue gray in here, again, this is still yellow gray, but it's getting very close to that neutral gray where again it's much harder to tell, you know, the yellow in it because we're neutralizing it more and more and more. And the more we add to it, the more neutral it's going to get. Until it's going to seem almost so neutral again we can't tell what it is. And if we kept adding this blue, it's going to start to look a little blue-gray. You know what I mean? There's a point at which it'll neutralize completely, and then the more blue I keep adding to it, well, then it will start to get a little bit brighter, or not brighter, but it'll shift from the yellow into the blue. So somewhere in between this and this is going to be a very neutral yellow gray. And we could do this for any of these colors. If we wanted to neutralize this one even more, again, we'd add some of the blue gray, because this is orange, so it's got the brown and has brown and white, and then we added the blue and white, and again, look how neutral this is now gone. It was here and now it's here. You know, so when you're trying to mix colors that are very close to neutral, you can use both sets of gray to really knock it back. So it's going to take a lot to knock this red back, because this red here, very strong. It really will fight you. It's a very strong color. So we're going to take the blue, very little red, and add just a little bit of that to it. Now we've got, it's still a violet, but it's a very neutral violet. It almost looks, you know. Now, and these are softly different colors. These may seem very similar until again I take a little bit of this and I put it right there. And if the camera is good enough, you should be able to see some of the purple. If it's not, because our eyes can see much better than a camera can, and so sometimes the nuances like that are going to be lost to the camera, but we can see them with our own eyes. Now it's the opposite with these guys. So with these guys, this was a green, so we were dulling it down with black, correct? But if we need this to go even duller still, we're going to add its complement, which would be the, you know, this brown. It's got orange. It's also got a little bit of red. Because it has orange, that means it has red. So again, if we add this to our green, gray, it's going to gray that green down even more than it was previously. So that's much duller now, and if we want to, we could dull it down even more by adding more of that red. Into that green. Looks like we lost a bit of it moved a little bit, but I think we lost some of the green, so I'm adding just a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow back into this at the very end. But again, it's very close to neutral, and again, it seems like maybe these four colors are all the same. They're not. This is, you know, definitely got a very definite green, definite purple, definite orange, definitely, you know, again, this is, you know, again, very close to neutral. And then this has a definite yellow to it. So if it's an orange, a red, or a yellow, we're going to use our brown and white mixtures. And we just mix up a dark gray, a medium gray, and a light gray. And we can add, if we add a little bit, it's just going to dull it a little bit. If we add a lot, it's going to dull it a lot. If I wanted something really, really super neutral and I'm using orange, I'd start with a puddle of gray, and then I'd add just a little bit of orange to that, you know, because I don't want it to go nuts. I want it to be, you know, fairly neutral. But if I needed it much brighter than that, well, then I would add a little bit of gray to quite a bit of orange, you know. And this is how we're going to have, again, this is much brighter, this is much duller, you know, as far as that goes. If it is a blue, a green, so a blue, a green, or a purple, we want to dull it down, well, then we're going to add the blue grays. Now, if the orange, yellow, or red needs to be dulled down more, they were being dulled with brown, but if they need to go even duller, we go to blue. With the green, the purple, and the blue, they were being dulled with the blue-gray. If they need to dull even more, then we're going to add the, you know, this burnt umber grays. And again, that will really knock it down and get it very close to neutral. So this is how we neutralize colors using this limited palette in oil painting. And you're going to always be, for those that are in my class, we're going to be painting from now on with a light, medium, and dark, and then just the straight brown. So we're going to have 3 puddles. We're going to mix up light, medium, and dark of the brown, which is basically just different mixes of brown and white. This has much more white, a little less white, very little white. And then the same thing with the black. We're going to mix up light, medium, and dark, lots of white, medium amounts of white, less white. And we're going to make 3 grays, 3 blue grays, 3 brown grays, or burnt umber grays, or what we could call warm grays. It doesn't matter. And then we'll have our 3 colors over here in our white. And this is how we're going to paint going forward, is we're going to use these to create wonderful little paintings and stuff. So this is how you can use a very limited palette, and you can get all kinds of colors this way. Colors that are brighter, colors that are lighter, colors that are darker, some that are more intense, some that are less intense, you know, and all these different hues and things. It's going to help your painting substantially. This has been Kevin McCain with Kevin McCain Studios on Mixing Grays. You all take care now. Have a good evening. Bye-bye now. Stay creative.